The program you're about to hear is based on real police interrogations and evidence pulled directly from an active investigation file. Camden, Missouri is the kind of place people describe as peaceful. A small, close-knit community near the Lake of the Ozarks where neighbors know each other, families grow together, and life moves at a slower pace. It's the kind of town where nothing ever seems to go wrong. But in the spring of 2013, something in Camden didn't sit right. Beneath the calm surface, there was a secret, one that had been buried for nearly a decade. 9 years earlier, a 48-year-old man named Tommy Hope had been brutally murdered inside his own home. He had been stabbed multiple times, his throat cut, and left in a pool of blood. The case shocked the community, but despite the violence, it went cold. No arrests, no closure. For years, the truth remained hidden, until an unexpected confession changed everything. But it didn't come from a suspect in custody. It didn't come from a witness. It came from a pastor. And it all started with a woman named Clara. Clara was 36 years old, a wife, a mother, and a devoted member of her church. To those who knew her, she was deeply religious, involved in church activities, and committed to her family. Nothing about her stood out as dangerous. But behind that image, something else was building. At first, it seemed harmless. Clara began leaving notes for her pastor. Small messages, personal thoughts, at times emotional, at times affectionate. It felt like admiration, maybe even a harmless crush. But over time, the tone changed. The notes became more frequent, more intense, more personal. She started texting him, looking for conversations, wanting his attention. And when he didn't respond the way she wanted, she became upset. What began as admiration slowly turned into obsession. The pastor tried to handle it quietly. He spoke to her directly, telling her the behavior was inappropriate. He reminded her that they were both married, that he had a family, and that he was a leader in the church. He warned her that this kind of situation could destroy everything. For a while, she would apologize. Then it would start again. Soon, the situation escalated. Clara began leaving notes, not just at church, but at his home. He would wake up in the morning and find messages left on his car. She had been coming to his house without his knowledge. At that point, concern turned into fear. But the most disturbing moment came when she handed him a notebook. Inside was a story she had written. At first glance, it appeared fictional, a narrative about a woman in love with her pastor. But as he read further, it became clear this wasn't just a story. It was personal. It described him, his appearance, his presence, his voice. Then it became explicit. The writing detailed fantasies, intimate scenarios, sexual encounters she imagined between them. The deeper he read, the more uncomfortable he became. It felt less like fiction and more like a message, a test, an invitation. That moment crossed a line he could not ignore. Then things escalated even further. Clara contacted his wife. She spoke in a way that made his wife uncomfortable, confused, and alarmed. When the pastor confronted Clara again, her response changed. This time, she didn't apologize. She threatened him. She told him that if he ever told anyone what he knew about her, she would destroy him. That was the moment he called the police. But when investigators sat down with him, they realized something else was going on. Because during all of this, Clara had told him a secret he had kept for 9 months. She told him that years ago, during a time when she was struggling with drugs, She had done something terrible. She said it calmly. She said she had killed someone. At first it was hard to believe, but as she described the incident, the details became specific. Too specific. The location, the circumstances, the violence. There was only one case that matched everything she described: the unsolved murder of Tommy Hope. Back in 2004, Tommy Hope had been found dead inside his home. The crime scene was brutal. There was blood everywhere, on the floors, the walls, even on the bottoms of his socks. It was clear there had been a struggle, a violent one. Investigators followed a trail of blood through the house, leading toward a window. They believed the killer had escaped that way, disappearing into the woods behind the home. Despite collecting evidence, DNA, fingerprints, items from the scene, nothing led to a solid suspect. Clara's DNA had been found at the scene, but she had an explanation. She admitted she had been there before, using drugs with Tommy. Her presence alone wasn't enough to prove she was the killer. With no clear motive and no direct evidence tying her to the murder, the case stalled, and eventually it went cold. Until now. Investigators realized they needed to speak to Clara, but they couldn't approach her directly about the murder, not without risking her shutting down completely. So they used a different strategy. They arrested her on the stalking and harassment charges involving the pastor. That gave them a reason to bring her in, a reason to talk. Inside the interrogation room, they kept things calm. No pressure, no accusations, just conversation. They asked about the pastor, about her feelings, about the notebook. She admitted she had feelings for him. She admitted writing the story, but she insisted she never intended to act on it. Then she began to open up. She talked about her loneliness, her struggles, her need for attention. She talked about her past, her drug use. And that's when the investigators slowly shifted the conversation. They began discussing addiction, how it affects people, how it makes them do things they wouldn't normally do. They gave her something important, an explanation, a way to separate who she was from what she had done. And that's when everything changed. They introduced the past. They mentioned the year, the location, the homicide. There was a moment where everything hung in the balance. She could deny it. She could ask for a lawyer. She could shut down completely. Instead, she said something simple. She said she knew what they were talking about. And then she confessed. She told them everything. She said that night she had left her house looking for drugs. She went to Tommy's home. When he didn't let her in, she climbed through a window. They used drugs together, but it wasn't enough. She wanted more. They began arguing. She said he was going to ruin her life. She panicked. In that moment, she grabbed a knife. She attacked him. She stabbed him repeatedly. She cut his throat. She described it without hesitation, without emotion. After it was over, she took his wallet to make it look like a robbery. Then she ran, escaping through the back of the house, just like investigators had believed years earlier. Every detail matched the crime scene. The wounds, the struggle, the escape, even the evidence that had never been made public. The case that had been cold for 9 years was finally solved. Clara admitted everything. She said it wasn't planned. She said it just happened. But she also said she knew she deserved to be punished. For investigators, the confession brought closure. Not just for them, but for Tommy Hope's family. A man described as kind, generous, someone who would give his last to help others. He didn't deserve to die that way. And for years, he had no voice. Now, finally, the truth had been heard. Clara later accepted a plea deal for second-degree murder. And just like that, a secret that had been buried for nearly a decade was brought into the light. In cases like this, justice doesn't always come quickly. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it comes from the most unexpected place. A conversation, a confession, a moment where someone finally decides to tell the truth. Because in the end, no matter how deeply something is hidden, it always finds a way to surface.